Hi, I'm B.J. Maloney with the Palm Harbor Historical Society, and that's easier than it looks easier than it is. We want to welcome you tonight and join us in our study of the history of the Palm Harbor Post Office. And we want to also say that this show is put on in coordination with the Pinellas County Historical Society, and we want to wish Pinellas County tonight happy birthday on their 75th anniversary this year. Right now we want to look at some of our memorabilia from the post offices, and we want to thank the Pinellas County Historical Society and also the Palm Harbor Post Office for letting us have these on loan. This machine that we looked at to begin with is a cancellation machine from the 1950s. It's one of the many things that the post office has used in past years to help speed up the mail. Before this cancellation machine, each individual piece of mail had to be hand-stamped. That wasn't too bad when there were only 5 families here in Palm Harbor, but it would certainly slow down things now. The next thing I want to show you is a picture of a train depot. It was the original train depot here in Palm Harbor. It has a little bit different architecture in that it's Russian. The person who designed it was a Russian architect, and it was designed in 1890. What the train did for us is speed up the mail by bringing it directly into Palm Harbor. Before that, or prior to 1890, we had to go to Clearwater from where the mail came from Cedar Key by boat. So this really helped us. Another thing that the Postal Service couldn't do without is your simple postage stamp. The one that I have here was mailed to Mrs. Flora Craver from Tallahassee, Florida in 1912. And the reason that this is significant is that that's our happy birthday, Pinellas County. And today, with our dapper pioneer editor Charlie Jones and our special guest Milton E. Nellinger, who is the postmaster of Dunedin, and Ernestine Nellinger, who is our postmaster here in Palm Harbor, we're going to trace very important parts of Pinellas County's history, and especially here in Palm Harbor. And now we want to turn it over to our pioneer editor, Charlie Jones.
Thank you, B.J., and hello everyone in TV land. We're glad to bring you History in the News. We have a very interesting subject, the history of the Postal Service in Palm Harbor, Florida. The first Postmaster General of the United States received his commission in 1775 and was Benjamin Franklin. 103 years later, Palm Harbor received its first commission under the name of Bay St. Joseph's and after St. Joseph's Sound. And the date was December 4th, 1878, and the first postmaster was J.C. Craver, a college graduate from Jonesboro, Illinois. He moved to Florida under orders from his doctor when he learned at the age of 27 that he had contracted tuberculosis, which was a very bad thing to have in those days. Tuberculosis was a killer because it didn't have treatments for it and didn't have the things that we have today to treat this bad disease. So he moved to the lush lands of Palm Harbor, Florida, and started improving his health. The location of his first post office in Mr. Craver's own home at crossroads of County Road 1 and Tampa Road 584. In 1888, Craver applied for and received another commission under the name of Sutherland, Florida. By this time, Craver had built a general store and post office in the downtown area on Florida Avenue. This building is now the Masonic Lodge, and this building is in good shape today and is used by the Masons throughout the county, and we are proud of this Masonic Lodge. This general store became the center of the community and continued in the role through the years. By the early 1920s, the post office had moved the northwest corner of Florida Avenue and Omaha Circle into a 2-story wooden building occupied by the town's doctor, Dr. Logan, which he had the pleasure of delivering many of the Palm Harbor babies at that time. Of course, it was called Southern at that time. The postmaster during this time was Mr. Durrance. In 1925, a petition was passed around town to change the name to something more catchy. So Palm Harbor was decided upon with some resistance. And by the way, this Palm Harbor, the name Palm Harbor came from the abundance of palm trees around the marshes and on the main streets and so forth in Palm Harbor. And we're still proud of this name because we still have many cabbage palm trees around this area. By 1926, the post office moved down the street to Adair's Grocery, and the new post office master was Mr. Chamberlain. We are unsure of the reason for so many moves. Memories don't recall where the postmasters decided upon the locations or where the post office just outgrew the facility, but by 1929, there was another move to the other side of Florida Avenue in the old Troutman building, which is now occupied by a uniform shop. Mr. Troutman was the postmaster, and he was a man of great integrity, and he was ruler over many, many scouts. In fact, I was a scout under Mr. Troutman, and my son later, by the inspiration of Mr. Troutman, he later became a Negro Scout, which we are very proud of. A man most known for his many years of work for the Boy Scouts. Mr. Troutman was postmaster until 1953, when Mr. Roy Ely took over as officer in charge until August the 4th, 1954, when Milton E. Nellinger was appointed postmaster on August the 5th, 1954. He was given the difficult task of finding yet another home for the Palm Harbor Post Office. But he did, and he did it well. And we will find out how the rest of this history unfolds by the two people who were there. And now back to truly the queen of the dolls and the pride of Pinellas County, B.J. Maloney.
Thanks, Charlie. You're good looking too. This chronological history of the post office expresses many things. Changing in a community's growth, interest, transportation, because the post offices at this time were very, very important places. They were probably the main gathering places for people. They came in to pick up their mail. But not only that, they came in to pick up their dry goods, their staples, maybe get their hair cut, go get a soda. It was a nice, warm gathering place. It was a place also to exchange greetings, find out how people were. And the postmasters of this time were the overseers of this special gathering place. Not only did they make sure that the mail was delivered in the rain and the cold, not the snow, because we didn't have much of that, but he was almost like a member of the family, for he was usually there when news was received, whether it was good or bad. We are very fortunate tonight to have two such caring people. Their husband and wife, both postmasters, one of Palm Harbor, Ernestine Nellinger, and Milton Nellinger, who was also postmaster, as we learned, in Palm Harbor in the early 50s, who is now postmaster at Dunedin. Welcome. We're so glad to have you here tonight. I bet, did you learn a little bit about the post office history from listening to Charlie, or did you know all that?
No, we learned quite a bit.
It's really interesting to see how the post office changed locations, because that's kind of where the center of town relocated. We learned, Milton, we'll start with you first, that when you became postmaster in 1954, you had the difficult task of moving the post office again. Now, we've moved all over town. Was there a reason that it was especially hard at this point?
Well, BJ, in 1954, financing was almost, you just couldn't get any bank financing. So, in all of the buildings in Palm Harbor, which there wasn't many, but they were all full, and there wasn't any for rent. So we contacted a local resident, Mr. Tom Knoxtine, and he loaned me the money to build a building. As far as the moving around, before I came in, the postmasters moved whenever there was an election. The Democrats went in, a Democrat was put in as postmaster, and when Republicans went in, they changed, so that's one of the reasons that the post office changed buildings so many times.
And every time a postmaster came in, he could elect whether he wanted to move or not?
Usually, yes, because he had to furnish the building itself. He had to furnish some type of space for the post office.
So in 1955, you built a post office.
Yes, we built that on College Hill. We needed additional space as well as moving, and we moved in early 1955.
So you moved from a space that was how large?
Approximately 500 feet to one that was 1,000 square feet, which was sufficient at that time.
And you were servicing approximately how many boxes, postal boxes?
600 rural route and approximately 200 P.O. boxes.
Which would give us a population of what?
Approximately 1,800 people.
And that was 1955, 1,800 people.
Yes.
Now, could you give us an idea of the route that a piece of mail would take coming into Palm Harbor at this time? Where would you get your mail from?
From the, Claude Cater was the person who picked it up at the depot. And he would bring it in. We had 4 trains and a truck that came by each day. So we did have plenty of transportation coming in and also going out. Well, a letter would come in, we would give it to the rural carrier or put it up in P.O. boxes. At that time, that's all we had. Wallace Sutton was the rural carrier, and at that time, incidentally, he also delivered the rural route in Tarpon Springs. They didn't have a rural route out of there, so he went up and cased Tarpon Springs mail and then delivered it too.
Yeah, he received a special pin. Can you tell me a little? Now, did you give that to him, Ernestine?
Yes, Ernestine gave that to him.
What did that commemorate?
That commemorated the 1,000,000 miles that he had traveled delivering mail.
In how many years of a span was that?
In the time that he had been a mail carrier.
So approximately 20 years?
Oh yes, longer than that.
That's incredible. Okay, why don't we go back? We found out how the mail gets to us. Now, when I mailed something in the Palm Harbor Post Office, what happened to it?
Well, first we hand stamped it. Took a hand and bopped each one of them just like that. And then, of course, we sorted it to cities or states, and then we put it in a sack, in a mail sack. And there's 2 trains that stopped and 2 trains that didn't. The trains that stopped, of course, we just took it down to the depot.
And you had packages and
exactly.
Everything else that went on,
and fruit. We had quite a few
fruit.
packages, yes, and fruit. A lot of fruit at that time.
Well, that was one of Palm Harbor's major exports at that time, was the fruit.
Yes, yes. It wasn't necessarily going through the post office, but it was leaving from the depot.
From the train.
Right.
Okay, and then after you bundled it up, then what happened to it? You had 2 trains that stopped. Now, what about the trains that didn't stop?
Well, we had a catcher pouch. That was a sort of a thin sack, about so big, and it had a belt around the middle. We put some mail in the top and some in the bottom.
Now, it was kind of catchy how you balanced this.
Yes,
if you didn't get it quite right, what would happen?
Well, the arm of the train would hit it, and it would go down and under the train sometimes, where it would be run over. But
that's when Scotch tape came in handy.
That's Scotch tape came in handy. But it had to be sort of equal in weight, so the catcher arm would pass by and catch the bag and continue on.
So how many pieces of mail do you think that you might have handled in one day's time, hand stamping it and hand sorting it and bundling it up and getting it to the train on time?
From 2,000 to 3,000.
That sounds like an awful lot. How many employees did you have at that time, approximately?
Well, I had 2 besides
employees?
myself. It was Mrs. Troutman and Mrs. Kenton.
You must have had a lot of overtime.
Well, no, the postmaster didn't have that many hours, so the postmaster had to do the work.
Oh, my goodness.
The postmaster duties at that time, I had to also work the window, so that was the difference.
Besides, okay, did you sort mail?
Oh, yes, yes.
So you really did everything.
Oh, yes. Postmasters at that time had to do everything.
He worked
and that's
7
small
days
an
a week.
office.
7 days a week.
And that's small an office, we did, yes.
Now, how does that differ from your duties today as postmaster for Dunedin?
Well, of course, I don't work the window any longer. And I have a lot more employees, and also I don't have rural routes in Dunedin. Ernestine has the rural routes in Palm Harbor.
Okay, up into 1955, all we had was rural routes. At what point did we change over and pick up the city delivery?
Well, we decided that we needed city delivery, but we had difficulty in finding a population of 2,500 people. That was one of the criteria for establishing city routes, is for a population of 2,500. So the postal inspector, in fact his name was Shelton, came over, and we tried to find 2,500. We had to go all the way north on alternate 19 to Baywood Village and get that area. Then we had to go out to Lakeshore Estates on Highway 19 to get our 2,500, but we did establish a city route at that time.
You even delivered into Dunedin at that point too, didn't you?
Yes, at that time we delivered right next door to the present high school in Dunedin, and then we went over to Main Street, which is 580, and we delivered out almost to Highway 19, and then we delivered on County Road 70.
And Wallace Sutton was still your rural carrier?
Yes, he was. We delivered both sides of the road on Main Street, so Dunedin wasn't delivering too much mail.
Well, in 1962, you got in first-class mail also, and that changed some things, didn't it? Exactly what did that change, Ernestine?
That meant that the post office became a first class. We had been a third class office when Milton became postmaster. Then the office went to a second class. And then when we went to first class, we got our famous canceling machine. We no longer had to hand cancel.
Now, what kind of social changes came in at that point when you were delivering the mail to people instead of having them come in and get it?
Well, the beautiful thing about not having city delivery was that we were the central gathering point for the people on a daily basis, and that seemed to be the highlight of a lot of the people in Palm Harbor of their day. And you got caught up on all of the news as to who had a baby or who was coming to visit or who was away in service, and all of the good news and the bad news, and it was a delightful time. Actually, when city delivery came into being in Palm Harbor, it rather hurt the businesses in the area there where the people gathered every day.
Because they had to come to town to pick up their mail, and thus use the services there.
That's right.
Well, I sure appreciate it. We're going to break for a history moment right now, but we'll be right back and find out what kind of changes took place in the 1970s. Thank you.
This is Bill Sears at Heritage Park, standing in front of the oldest existing log house in Pinellas County. In 1848, with a 240-acre government land grant in his possession, Captain James Paramore McMullen, his wife, and several slaves began a new life in the wilderness of the west coast of Florida. Using heart of pine logs, they put together this Georgia-style log house, which contains 4 rooms, 2 downstairs with a dog trot between them, and 2 upstairs. 8 of the McMullen children were born in this house, as well as 50 others, with Mrs. McMullen acting as midwife. Clearing land at the rate of 1 acre in 1 year, Captain McMullen established pasture and cropland that provided subsistence for the large family. This house, as it was when the McMullen family occupied it, may be seen today at Heritage Park.
Welcome back. I know you enjoyed that look at Heritage Park. We're in the 70s now with the post office in Palm Harbor. We've moved, in 1960, we moved from the center of the duplex and we added on another space that was larger than before. We air conditioned the post office, which is the first time Palm Harbor had air conditioning. We automated it to a point with an automated canceling machine. So we've speeded things up quite a bit, but we've made it a little bit impersonal in some ways with our city delivery. But there's some other far-reaching effects that took place in the 1970s. The first being that there was a whole new reorganization that came about. Ernestine, could you tell us a little bit about that? It was around, what, 1971?
1971. the old post office department became the U.S. Postal Service in 1971. The appointments of postmasters was changed. There were postal employees became unionized. There were a lot of changes that took place in that postal reorganization.
Okay, one of the major changes for Palm Harbor is Milton left us for Dunedin, but we got Ernestine as officer in charge, and that was 1971. And then in 1973, you became postmaster.
Yes, I served as officer in charge or acting postmaster at that time.
Now, what was the difference between being officer in charge and postmaster?
It was just a difference in title. Now they're called officer in charge. At that time, we were called acting postmasters. I was the assistant to the postmaster prior to his leaving, and they didn't fill that position for almost 2 years. He left in October of '71 to go to Dunedin, and they didn't fill the postmaster vacancy until August of '73.
Now there should be some changes here between 1955 when you, or 1954 when you became postmaster, and 1973 when you became postmaster. What were our changes in population?
We began to grow here at that time.
I mean, did you really notice a surge? Not like now, but...
Not like now, but yes. For Palm Harbor, it was a surge. I remember we used to think of a business that brought in a tray of mail as being a tremendous business, and of course now that's just common everyday happening for many businesses.
Yeah, we went, what, from 600 boxes inside the post office to how many?
Oh, now
In the 70s?
we have close to 1,200 boxes now, but we have so much delivery that we really don't need the post office boxes as much.
Now, in the late 60s, your boundaries changed a little bit. Milton, you dropped delivery to Dunedin.
In the immediate area of Dunedin, yes. Palm Harbor still delivers down County Road 1 to Michigan Boulevard, and also down County Road 70, and takes care of both sides of the road there until they come to Dunedin delivery. Incidentally, whenever I went to Dunedin, it was a promotion. Dunedin had more business, more revenue, more deliveries, more everything. So it was a promotion. But now Palm Harbor last year caught up with Dunedin in the deliveries, and they haven't looked back. They're still going ahead of us.
During the reorganization, Tampa helped you with something. They came in with, before that you were sorting all of the mail. At that point, what did that mean to you as far as workforce and time hours spent when Tampa took over your sorting?
What that meant was that we didn't need as many cases for outgoing distribution. We didn't need to increase our clerk staffing for outgoing distribution. It saved space. It kept us in the building a lot longer because we didn't have to add the additional equipment or the additional employees. That was done by machinery in Tampa at the MSC.
Did you like that?
We were reluctant to begin with. Nobody likes change, and everyone was afraid that their staff. But as it worked out in our case, the growth became quite prevalent then, and we didn't lose anyone. We were ahead of the game all the time as far as employees were concerned. So
what point did you start bulging at the seams?
Prior to our move in '77, we had a trailer out back of the building there on Flott Avenue, and we were side by side until you couldn't get a mail cart through.
I bet Christmas was fun.
We lined up our parcels outside in the driveway, and there's where we dispatched our parcels in the evening.
That's incredible. In 1977, what happened?
We moved into our new facilities on Alternate 19 at 495 Alternate 19. We were extremely proud of our new building. The building itself was a beautiful thing and very well landscaped. And the design won a national award. It came in second on a National Architectural Award, for which we were very proud.
Well, your architect is the husband of one of the people who helped us with Pinellas House, Connie Madonna, so we're real proud of that.
Yes.
And at this point, you're looking to increase your size again.
Right. We now have 2 trailers out back. We had a tent this Christmas to work our parcels in.
How many extra employees did you have to hire for Christmas this year?
In our particular office, we hired only 3 or 4, but for the annex that did the outgoing managed mail distribution, there were about 130 casuals that we hired here in Palm Harbor to work that outgoing mail.
How many pieces of mail do you handle on an average day?
Oh, probably 20,000. Depending on the day, of course, we can go from outgoing mail. It just depends upon the day of the month, and we don't count our outgoing mail now because we don't cancel it.
Mm-hmm.
But when we do count our mail coming in, we're looking at, first-class mail, possibly between 20 to 30,000 pieces.
There's something else that changed in the 70s that we ought to mention, and that's prior to a certain point, the postmaster had the responsibility in Palm Harbor of numbering all the houses. At what point did you relinquish that duty?
That was given to the county in the late 1970s. That was a welcome relief. We were beginning to grow quite rapidly, and it was a very big chore to have to number all the subdivisions as they came online.
And now the county takes care of that. But one thing, when we only had rural boxes, it was very difficult to find people. If, you know, there are many instances of someone died in the family, and you were telling me of an instance where somebody died in the family and they couldn't find the relatives. And many times they knocked on your door very late at night and said, where?
Well, yes, the police would have to come to us. Just route 1 box so-and-so that didn't give them any information. So yes, we had to either take them or go with them or explain to them just where it was. It was something that had to be done. Mm-hmm. And it's just one of the things the postmasters did in small offices all over the nation. All
over the country.
Yes.
And they still do it.
They still do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank both of y'all for being with us tonight. You're 2 very special people. I've worked with Ernestine in many things, and you still carry forth that caring love that the postmasters did of old, and we appreciate that here in Palm Harbor. And we just want you to know that our support is behind you 100% in your new growth.
Thank you.
Thank you, BJ.
Thank you for being with us tonight. Bye.